Say you've spent weeks or maybe even years dreaming about your book, and finally you're ready to write chapter 1. How do you know if it's any good? Here's a hard truth. Most readers and agents won't give you more than a few pages to convince them to care about your book. And unfortunately, a lot of first-time authors accidentally lose their reader in that very first chapter. But don't worry, if you are struggling with your first chapter, I am here to help. My name is Haley, and I am an author, writing teacher, and editor who has taught the craft of writing to thousands of people around the world. In this video, I'm breaking down the 7 most common first chapter mistakes new writers make, with examples, reasons why they happen, and how to fix them. Mistake number 1, starting too early. One of the most common traps is starting your story too early in your character's day or even life. Writers often begin with a character waking up, making coffee, driving to work, thinking about their past. It's a natural instinct. We're trying to get our footing, and we want readers to know what's going on. But the problem is readers want story now. Here are some signs that you might have started your story a bit too early. First, if nothing urgent happens in the first few pages, you might have started too early. Or if you could cut your entire scene and the story would still make sense, it's probably not necessary for the plot. You may have also started your story too early if the real plot doesn't kick in until chapter 2 or 3 or even later. If you've done any of these things, here is how you can fix it. You want to start in media res, which means right in the middle of something, ideally in a moment of tension or disruption or change. Instead of saying, Emma woke to the sound of birds and stretched, it was the first day of her junior year. Try something more like this. Emma's phone buzzed with a message from a blocked number. Tell anyone what you saw and you'll regret it. It was her first day of junior year. With this second example, we are in. There's conflict, there's a question, and this ordinary day now has some extraordinary stakes. Mistake number 2 is info dumping. The second big mistake that authors make is overloading the reader with information right away. Info about the world, the backstory, the character's entire family tree. This can be especially common in fantasy and sci-fi, but it really does show up in all genres. This often happens because you have built this incredible world or backstory and you just want to share it right now. But when readers are just getting their bearings, giving them too much information too fast can be overwhelming. You can spot this in your writing by looking for paragraphs that feel like Wikipedia entries. You can also see you're doing this if you are explaining things before the reader really has a reason to care about them. Another sign you've made this mistake is if you are naming 5 characters and 3 places all in the first page. Now, if you've done any of those things, don't worry, here's how to fix it. First, think about the concept of a breadcrumb trail. You only need to tell readers what they need to know right now to understand what's happening. Here's a tip. Start with something grounded and sensory, then layer in backstory throughout your novel as it becomes relevant. Here's an example. Instead of saying something like, the kingdom of Eldrin had been at war for centuries, the magical caste system divided people into blah, 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 try something like, Raya tightened her grip on the blade. If the guards recognized her mark, it was over. We're there, we're in the moment, and this mystery invites us as readers to want the backstory. So when it arrives, it will be welcome. Mistake number 3 is called floating head syndrome. Now this one is subtle but deadly. Floating head syndrome is when your character is thinking, reflecting, or talking, but the scene has no physical grounding. It has no sense of space, no action, no interaction with the world. It's just thoughts in a void or in a floating head. This could show up as a character who is just thinking for pages, or having dialogue with no setting or movement, or just having absolutely no sensory details on the page. Readers need to anchor themselves in a sense of place through those 5 senses. Without these types of cues, it's really hard to picture anything, so they're going to disconnect. Now, if you have created a floating head, don't worry, we can fix it. First, use anchoring actions and setting details. Let your character move, observe, or react to what's around them. Make sure to show us where they are, not just what they're thinking. So for example, instead of saying, I don't know why I said yes, maybe I felt sorry for him, try something like, I shoved my keys into the mailbox and leaned against the cold brick wall. Why did I say yes? Maybe I felt sorry for him. Now with that, we're there with the main character. Mistake number 4 is no clear want or problem. Readers connect with characters who want something. Even if they don't like the character yet, that desire creates momentum. A common first chapter mistake is starting with a character who's just floating through life. Nothing's at stake. They are just existing. Here's how you might spot it in your writing. If there is no goal or problem introduced in chapter 1, or if your character is passive with things just happening to them, you might have made this mistake. If you have, here's how to fix. Give your character a clear goal, problem, or emotional need in that very first chapter, even if it's small. That will give your reader enough of a reason to keep turning pages. For example, in The Hunger Games, Katniss's goal in Chapter 1 is simple: to feed her family and avoid trouble. But that simple goal introduces her world, her grit, and the later tension of the story. So ask yourself, what does your character want today? What problem are they facing right now? Mistake number 5 is introing too many characters. If you have ever read the first page of a book and thought, wait, who is Ben? And who is Marta? Are they siblings? Are they friends? Why do I even care about these people? Then you have experienced this mistake. Now, this is a super common mistake, introducing too many characters too quickly, and it will leave your reader overwhelmed and confused. Now, this mistake happens because as a writer, you already know who everybody is. You have spent months or years with your characters in your head. So for you, it makes perfect sense to bring in your protagonist's roommate, their boss, their childhood best friend, their talking cat, all by page 2. But for your reader, they're going to be a bit more overwhelmed. They are meeting these people for the very first time. They're not going to remember names at first, they're just going to remember impressions. So if all of your characters show up at once, there is no space to form a mental picture or create an emotional connection with any of these characters. Here are some signs you might have done this in your draft. First, you've named more than 3 characters in the first few pages. Or you have characters who appear briefly, but they don't have a clear role or distinctive trait. Likewise, if you have found yourself writing long paragraphs to explain each person's relationship to the main character, you may have made this mistake. If you have, don't worry, here's how to fix it. First, start with just 1 or 2 characters that really matter in that opening scene. These characters should either drive the plot because they're involved in the inciting incident or something else crucial, or they should reveal something critical about your protagonist, how they interact with the world around them, what they care about. When you do introduce someone new, give them a defining detail that helps them stand out, not just physically, but emotionally or behaviorally too. For example, instead of, at breakfast, Clara sat between Maya, who always had something snarky to say, and Kevin, her uptight cousin. Across from them was John, her boyfriend, and Louise, his ex. Phew, that is too many people. Instead of something like that, try something like this. Clara stirred her cereal, trying to ignore Maya's non-stop commentary about her love life. One eyebrow always cocked, always watching, Maya never missed a chance to poke the bear. Now we have 1 character, distinct, dynamic, and grounded in the moment. Think about quality over quantity. 1 vivid character is worth 5 more forgettable ones. Mistake number 6 is overwritten prose. Let's talk about overwriting because this is a trap even experienced writers fall into. When you're starting out, it's tempting to think that more description equals better writing. You want the reader to see it all. The velvet curtains, the dust motes in the sunbeam, that character's trembling pinky finger. But here's the thing, clarity always beats cleverness. This may show up in your writing as overuse of adjectives and adverbs, or trying to sound writerly with elaborate metaphors. Maybe you have described every single moment, no matter how mundane, or you've explained what you've already shown. Overwritten prose is going to slow your pace, making your emotional beats feel forced, and let's be honest, exhausting to read. Here's how to fix this mistake. First, aim for precision and purpose. Pick 1 or 2 strong, specific details that evoke emotion or atmosphere. Trust your reader to fill in the rest. Here's an example of an overwritten paragraph. He stepped into the room, the mahogany floors creaking beneath his heavy boots, worn from years of use. A single chandelier, its crystal teardrops shimmering like frozen fire, cast kaleidoscopic light over the antique furniture swathed in dust. Good. Some nice writing in there, but a little overwritten. Now here's a tightened example. His boots creaked on the wood. Dust covered the old furniture, untouched beneath the flickering chandelier. Much simpler, right? Same feeling, fewer words, stronger rhythm. Let your prose serve your story, not distract from it. Finally, mistake number 7 is not establishing your tone or genre clearly. Your first chapter doesn't just start the plot, it sets a promise about the kind of story your reader is getting into. And if your tone or genre singles are off, you risk a total mismatch. So here are some common signs you might have missed the mark with this. First, if your tone feels like a rom-com, but you are actually writing a mystery, you're going to create unrealistic expectations for your reader. If your story reads like slice of life realism, but later turns into epic fantasy, you're going to get that mismatch between reader expectations and what you've actually written. If you are using modern slang in a historical drama, you've likely set the wrong expectations. Or if you have no hint of the central conflict or genre conventions until chapter 3, readers might disconnect. Here's why this matters. Readers choose books based on expectation. If your cover or blurb or category says thriller, but your first chapter reads more like a cozy romance, you're going to lose trust, even if your story gets there eventually. Here's the fix. Signal genre and tone early, not through exposition, but through things like language and sentence structure, imagery and setting, the types of problems your character faces, or the emotional texture of the opening scene. Here's an example. If you're in fantasy, start with magic, mystery, or world-building tension. If you're writing romance, try starting with emotional vulnerability or romantic possibility. Writing a thriller? Try starting with danger, secrets, or high stakes. Here's an example. Let's say your book is a paranormal thriller. If you open with a line like, "I woke up late and rushed through my morning routine, hoping I wouldn't miss the bus again," we're kind of in generic YA territory. There's nothing specific that reads paranormal thriller. Now try something like, "The ghost was back. Third night this week. She watched me in the mirror as I brushed my teeth." Now the reader knows exactly what they're in for. Remember, your tone is a contract. You want to use the first chapter to sign that contract. Every writer struggles with their first chapter. It's where the blank page meets the weight of expectation. But there's good news. Mistakes in the first chapter aren't deal breakers. They're just drafts. And now you know exactly how to fix them. If this video has helped you spot something in your own work, hit like and drop a comment. Let me know, which of these mistakes have you made and how are you going to fix it? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.